speak about Shavuos. We, at every one of the regalim, the festivals, during the Amidah, we insert the appellation for the Yom Tiv, for the festival, for the Moed. Shavuos is referred to as Zman Matan Toraseinu, the time of the giving of our Torah. It's our Torah. It was given to us. Zman Matan Torah. What's Torah Seinu? It's a possessiveness. We possess it. It's ours. Although we say in the text of Birchas Torah, Shenoslo is Torah so, He gave us His Torah. Initially it was His Torah, but He gave it to us. After He gave it to us, now it's our Torah. It's Torah Seinu. We find the famous argument where the Gemara discusses there was a story, there was a certain oven that was made of earthenware. It's referred to as Tanur Achnoi. Tanur Achnoi is a certain type of viper, snake, which coils itself. So the shape of this oven was shaped similarly. The Torah tells us that if you have an earthenware vessel which becomes contaminated, you cannot immerse it in the mikveh. It cannot be relieved of its contamination as long as it retains its identity as a vessel. The Torah says it has to be smashed. Where it's smashed, it's broken, no longer functions as a vessel, then it becomes pure. It's no longer contaminated. Because to be contaminated, it has to be a vessel, a kli. So there's a discussion, what happens if initially they severed it into parts, and then they reconstructed it? Does it retain its original contamination? Or do we say no, that since it was severed, and now that it's reconstructed, since it was dismantled in a way where it was inoperable, reconstructing it means nothing. So there was an argument between the Chachamim, the rabbis, and Rebbe Lezer ben Hurkinus. Rebbe Lezer was referred to as Rebbe Lezer Agadol, the great Rebbe Lezer. So the Chachamim were of the opinion it's contaminated. Rebbe Lezer Agadol, the great Rebbe Lezer ben Hurkinus, says it's pure. And Rebbe Lezer was very adamant about his position, that he's correct. And there's a whole lengthy story how he wanted to prove that he was correct. Finally, he said, if I'm correct, let a heavenly voice emanate from heaven that will declare that the laws as I rule. Sure enough, a baskol, a heavenly voice, declares from Shamayim, from heaven, halacha k'Rebbe Lezer. We rule like Rebbe Lezer. Rabbi Yeshua, who was a colleague of Rebbe Lezer, stands up and declares, lo b'shamayim. It's not for heaven to decide what the law is. We decide what the law is. God says, tahor. The terrestrial Bezdin rules, it's contaminated. Lo b'shamayim. When Torah was given at Sinai, it was Torah so. Initially it was God's Torah. But in terms of the way it's processed based on our capability, on human intellect. Of course, you have to meet the criteria that God sets forth. You have the Yudgam Midrash HaTorah and the Dreshes Poem, the 13 methodologies through which we interpret the Torah, and all the Besorah, what was transmitted from Sinai. That's fact. But in terms of the intellectual capability and the human capacity, it's within that context. And since the majority rules contrary to that, Rebbe Lezer was a minority opinion, and the Torah says whenever you have an irresolvable question, you follow majority. So the majority position is it's contaminated. Therefore, Talmud tells us, the Gemara tells us, that all the food items that were prepared in this oven They burnt them to openly show that the law is not as Rebbe Lezer ruled, that it's tomei, it's spiritually contaminated, and was burnt. It's matan Torah seinu. When God gave Torah at Sinai, it's ours. It's based on our capacity, what we understand. It's not what God understands. The divine mind understands it should be like Rebbe Lezer. But the human mind, which was given to be processed by the human mind, we rule like we understand that the position that it's contaminated is a more correct position. That's the position we follow. God's okay with that. But he said, Lo b'shamayim. He said, Halacha Rebbe Lezer. Doesn't make a difference. Rabbi Yeshua declared, Lo b'shamayim. It's not up to God to make that decision. It's up to us. He gave us the power, and whatever we rule, he's agreeable to that. And the world functions within that system. Talmud discusses a case. If a Torah scholar, Torah says that you have to acknowledge the Talmud Chacham, a Torah sage. For darta b'nei zokein, you have to acknowledge an elder. What's an elder? Ein zokein el mishikono chochma. An elder is a person who acquires wisdom. Chochma means Torah wisdom. So if an ordinary Torah sage enters within your 4 cubits, you have to stand in his presence to acknowledge his presence. Once he passes out of your proximity, then you could sit. What about happens if the Talmud Chacham, if the Torah scholar, he says, I'm willing to waive my honor. What wants to waive it? Talmud Chacham has a right to waive his honor. If he says, it's okay, you don't have to stand. When I come within your proximity, the person does not have to stand. Talmud Chacham waives his honor is waived. So Talmud says, what's it based upon? It's based upon a verse in Tehillim. Because David HaMelech says in Tehillim that the Torah is referred to as Torah Hashem. It's God's Torah. And after the person studies it, it says Torah so. It becomes his Torah. Before you study it, it's God's Torah. Once you study it and you process it, God says, now it's yours. So since it's considered your Torah, it's your personal asset, therefore, the Talmud says, a Torah sage who chooses to waive his honor, he's not permitted to disgrace his honor. Disgrace Torah, that right he does not have. But honor, to waive his honor, that he has a right. He has a right to waive his honor. So it's interesting. Before you study, although it's Torah Seinu, it's matan Torah Seinu. It was given to us. It's our Torah. It's our asset. But simultaneously, it's still God's. You have to deal with it within the parameters which he set. It's Torah Hashem. You have no right to waive someone else's honor. You have no right to waive the honor of Torah if it's unrelated to you. But if it's related to your being, that you deserve to be honored because of what you possess, that you have a right to waive. So we have, even within the context of Torah Seinu, it's our Torah, but still, it's still referred to as Torah Hashem. It's still God's Torah. So Shavuos is matan Torah Seinu. Time of the giving of our Torah. Chag HaShavuos, it's the festival of weeks, the holiday of weeks. But what is its essence? It's matan Torah Seinu. It's time of the giving of our Torah. It was the giving of our Torah. That's interesting, a little contradictory. It's the giving of our Torah. I mean, once we've received it, it's ours. But at the time of the giving, until it's given, it's not ours. So how do we interpret it? It's a time of the giving of our Torah. Initially, God created this world. God created existence in the beginning. What was the objective of creation? Bereshis bara. So Rashi, at the beginning of Bereshis, cites the Midrash, B'shvil Torah shnikras Bereshis. The objective of creation was for the purpose that the Torah should be abided by. You should live within the dictates of Torah. The human being, which human being? Every nation is bound to the Torah. The objective of existence is that, specifically that, and only that. Has no other value. Existence, God created this universe with all its galaxies, whatever exists, with all the nations of the world. Their value is only the Torah. But 70 nations have no relevance to the Torah. They only have relevance to the 7 Noahide laws. We call the Shev Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. So what is their relevance to Torah? Bishul Yisrael, Shnikras Reishis. The Torah was created for a nation called Yisrael, which they're classified as Reishis. They are the choicest. So you have the Torah, which is the objective, and the nation is the Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people. Everything in existence exists for these two entities. The setting is for the fulfillment of the Torah. The nation, which must advance itself, which are referred to as it says, the time of the giving of Torah at Sinai, the Goy Kadosh, the holy nation, the Mamleches Kohanim, the kingly priestly people, that is the purpose, that's the value of creation. So what is the purpose of the rest of existence? To accommodate that people. Whatever way they could be assisted in their function, that is your value. Outside of that, you have no other value. Person is a king, he has family, princes, princesses. What are the values of the subjects? To accommodate the king, to accommodate his family. The value of existence is to accommodate Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, or the princes. As the Gemara tells us, who are the kings? Man Malki Rabbanon. Who are the kings? Who have royal status, but even more than just a prince. Man Malki Rabbanon. There's a discussion in the Mishnah, in Shabbos. The law is rabbinically, you're not permitted to take medication on Shabbos. It's a rabbinic fence. Why aren't you permitted to take medication on Shabbos? Because one of the creative activities which you're not permitted to do is pulverizing something, grinding. So to make medication, you have to take the various herbs and ingredients, and they have to be ground. So there's a concern that if we allow you to take medication, you may actually do the preparation on Shabbos. It's a Torah violation. Therefore, rabbinically, you're not permitted unless a person is so debilitated that he has to lie in bed. He has such pain that he can't tolerate the pain. That's part of the legislation. If, in fact, you're affected by the pain or the illness to such a degree, you're permitted to take medication. It does not have to be life-threatening. But that's how they legislated the law. But the basis is what? Because you may pulverize, it's called shchikas samamonim, the grinding of the various ingredients, the various herbs that are needed for the medication. So there's a Mishnah discusses a case that in the olden days, ancient days, most people anointed themselves. They would anoint themselves. They would use olive oil to anoint themselves. Olive oil wasn't really expensive oil. So the average person would use olive oil. But royalty, they would use persimmon oil. Persimmon oil is very expensive oil. Persimmon oil. So for a king or a prince to use persimmon oil, that's ordinary. An ordinary person would only use persimmon oil only if he had some kind of skin ailment, because it was too expensive to use under normal circumstances. So just to keep his skin clean and soft, he would use regular ordinary oil, olive oil. But if he had a medical issue, then he would use persimmon oil. But the king and the prince, the royal family, they would always use persimmon oil. So for the king and the prince, for them to use persimmon oil, they're permitted to use this on Shabbos. The Jewish king, the prince, permitted, because for them it's not out of the ordinary. It's not an indication that they have any medical issue. But an ordinary person, to go to that level of expense, since they usually don't, that's seen as a medical procedure. That's accommodating your medical need, therefore you're not permitted. So there's an opinion in the Mishnah, it's the opinion of Rav Shimon, says, Jewish people are b'nei Malachim. Jews are princes. All Jews are princes. We're of royal status. So if you're royal status, let's say a prince, for whatever reason he's fallen on hard times, can't afford to buy persimmon oil. But what's appropriate for him? To use ordinary oil. Ordinary oil, that's for a commoner. So even the Jew, although he doesn't have the means necessarily to buy the persimmon oil, but because of his status, it's appropriate for him to use persimmon oil. We're b'nei Malachim. At Sinai, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, what did God say? Mamleches kohanim v'goy kodosh. You're a holy, princely, kingly people. You're royalty. So if you're royalty, of course, so this rabbinic law regarding this particular area has no application to you. Because this is appropriate to that degree. There's a question which is asked by the Maral. Famous question. Usually, whenever the Torah states a holiday, it gives us the understanding of the significance and the innate value of the Yom Tov, of the holiday, of the festival, of the holiday. For instance, Yom Kippur is referred to in the Torah as Yom HaKippurim, Day of Atonement. Pesach, Zman Cherusenu, it's the holiday of redemption. It's Gula. The Torah it's very clear what Pesach is. What is Sukkot? Ki b'Sukkos Hoshavti Bnei Yisrael. You sat in booths, whatever. There's an argument. What is the meaning? When we left Egypt, we were in Sukkos. Either Sukkos means the clouds of glory. We were engulfed with this divine protection, or it means in huts. We were in booths in the desert. What about Rosh Hashanah? Rosh Hashanah is referred to as Yom Trua. It's the day of the blast, or the remembrance of the blast. Is that what Rosh Hashanah is? It's the day of judgment. I mean, the Torah, for some reason, is concealing the essence of the day. I mean, factually, if it's Yom HaDin, it's the day of judgment. It's literally the most serious day of the year. The prosecution is fierce. And yet the Torah somehow disguises it, conceals it. The day of the blast of the shofar. Or it's the remembrance of the blast of the shofar. Why? Why is Torah concealing it? Now, what about Shavuos? Shavuos is Zman Matan Torasenu, day of the giving of our Torah. What is it referred to? Chag HaBikurim. When do you bring the new fruits? The festival of the new fruits. You rejoice. You're bringing the new fruits to the temple, to the Beis HaMikdash. Bikurim, you give it to the Kohen. It's the gift to the Kohen. The first fruit that ripens, or the first grain that ripens, you identify it, and Shavuos is first, this is when you begin bringing it. But it's much more than that. Shavuos was Matan Torasenu, nationhood. We became God's people. We became a spiritual people. Existence met its purpose, as we'll discuss in a moment. Until the giving of Torah at Sinai, there was a question whether the world was going to continue. When did the world take on a degree of permanence? Only when the Jews said, Nasa v'nishma. Until we said we accept unequivocally, there was a question whether the world would continue. So all existence met its purpose. We became God's people. That's what we're celebrating. We're celebrating nationhood. Pesach is redemption. Gula. What's Gula? What's the value of Gula? Unless it concludes with what? The objective of Gula was nationhood, to become God's people. But yet Torah doesn't discuss it. Doesn't mention it. You have to figure it out. From the narrative, we left Egypt. So many days later, we stood at Sinai, and God offered us the Torah. 10 Commandments, Aser Sadibros. But why? What is it very explicit? It's Chag HaShavuos Zman Matan Torasenu. That's what the Torah should say. Not Chag HaBikurim. It's the festival of the new fruits. Why? That's the question Maral asks. So Maharal of Prague explains that there is a theme regarding holidays. The theme of holidays, Yom Tovim, or Moadim, in the Torah is every Jew, regardless of whatever level he may be, has to be able to relate to the holiday as a joyous moment. Even at the most elementary level, he has to be able to experience as a joyous moment. Although there's no mitzvah of Samachta b'Chagyecho, as on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, it's another level. We don't eat, we don't feast on Yom Kippur. It's a day of atonement. We have to afflict ourselves. We have to afflict ourselves. But it's a joyous moment. Do you know what it means? You have endless debt, and God says you're able to relieve yourself of all the debt with a minimum amount of initiative. This is the ultimate. You're freed of that. God doesn't even allow the prosecutor to prosecute on Yom Kippur. Hasoton. The Gemara says, what is the numerical value of Hasoton? 364. There's one day a year which God doesn't allow Satan to prosecute Klal Yisrael. Rosh Hashanah, it's fierce. Prosecution is fierce on Rosh Hashanah. It's the Yom Adin, Day of Judgment. Yom Kippur doesn't allow it. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Yom Kippur, every Jew can relate to that. God forgives us. He's forgiving. Pesach, Gula, we were slaves, we were in bondage, we were tortured, we were killed, we were persecuted. God brings 10 plagues on the Egyptians, and the final blow, Makas Bechoros, they drive us out of Egypt. This is redemption. Every Jew can relate to redemption, freedom, holiday of freedom. We're in the desert. God provided His protection. It was an unlivable situation, a desolation which is not to be understood. God takes us, provides for us the manna, clouds of glory, the wellspring, paradise in the desert. Which Jew can't relate to that? Commemorate that. What about the Yom Hadin? God says there's one day a year you have to do a self-introspection, take inventory. You're going to be under the gun, putting it mildly, of a level of prosecution. You have to acknowledge, you have to coordinate me. And you have to be totally submitting, a level of submission to me. And it's not simple. The 3 ledgers which are open. If you're absolutely righteous, you're signed and sealed for life. If not, God forbid, it's to the extreme opposite. And if you're middle of the road, they hold your case over. It's terrifying moment. We read in the Sign of Tokef, the angels in heaven tremble. They tremble from the harshness of the judgment that's taking place. Could a Jew relate to that with joy? A Jew who doesn't have really a very advanced background and a deep, profound understanding of the value of that day, he says he shudders. This is a holiday. There's even a question whether you're permitted to fast on the day, although you're not obligated to fast. That's how overwhelming it is. Therefore, the Torah disguises it, conceals. It's the day of the blast. Everybody's running. I haven't heard the shofar since last year. It's something unique experience. Every Jew, even at the most superficial level of understanding, he can relate to that. Yom Teruah. It's my Torah saying. Before Sinai, what was the classification of the Jew? We were Noahites. We were B'nai Noach. We had 7 Noahide laws, which basically means live as a civilized human being. Don't murder, don't commit incest and adultery. Don't blaspheme God. Don't be a pagan idolater. Don't eat meat or a limb off a living animal. What else? Basically, it's limited to that. Live as a civilized human being. If you're a Jew, although you're a Noahide, you have to circumcise yourself, and you're not permitted to eat the hind quarter of an animal because of sciatica nerve. It's not so difficult, not so complicated. The Jew prides himself anyway. Light unto the nations. What is it? What the moral, ethical conscience of the world. It's not so terrible. All of a sudden, Sinai comes. God says, now, puts a mountain overhead, it says, now, 365 negative commandments, 248 positive commandments. You're bound, hand and foot shackled. You cannot make a move unless it conforms with my will. You understand what this is? Here I'm a free man, living as an ethical human being, being able to partake of anything in the world, basically. Now all of a sudden I'm confined, limited to a level. I've lost my freedom. I've given up all my freedom. How do we understand this? This is a holiday. This is a time to rejoice. What are we rejoicing over? This is servitude at the most extreme level. It may not be physical bondage, but it's mental, emotional limitation at a level which you can't even relate to. This Torah says you must celebrate that. Celebrate. What have you given us? You've taken away everything from us. But there's a mitzvah, celebrate. But who understands that? Who understands the value of that? You have to be at a special level to appreciate the value of what that is. Chag HaBikurim. Torah says, you know what it is? Festival of the New Fruits. You know, music. They bedeck the animal with gold, and everything, and they accompany him up to Yerushalayim, bring in the new grain and the new fruits, the Kohen. It's a time of celebration. Every Jew can relate to that. Every Jew. But what is the essence? The essence isn't to a level of unlimited. God shows us, the King of Kings, the Creator of the world, says, if you want to have a relationship with me, you must assume a spiritual posture. If you understand, and that, this is eternity. There's a Midrash. The Midrash tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Jewish people, he says, I'm presenting before you life and death. You have a choice. And Moshe says, I encourage, uvacharta b'chayim. Choose life. Can you imagine? You say, here you have an inferno. You'll be incinerated in an instant. You have paradise. I give you a choice. Either go into the fire, or go into paradise. And I encourage you to choose life. This needs an encouragement. It's obvious. Any rational, sane human being is choosing life over death, instantaneous death. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, I'm presenting to you Hachayim v'amovis, life and death, uvacharta b'chayim. What does he have to encourage us? Isn't it obvious you're going to choose life? So Midrash says, not so simple. Not so simple. And it explains it with an allegory. This person travels, and he comes to a crossroads, and he meets an old wise man at the crossroads. And the person looks to his left. He sees, as far as the eye could see, beautifully paved roads with shrubbery and fruit trees for miles, as far as he could see. To the left, he sees a road which is pocked, snakes, scorpions, predator animals, as far as the eye could see. And the old wise man who's at the crossroads says, I know exactly what's going through your mind. You're taking the road to the left. So he says, I advise you. I've been around, I've lived a long life. As much as the left seems to be much more attractive than the right, after 3 days' journey to the left, you're going to come upon a level of disaster, of pain and suffering, which you can't even imagine what that is. And what you see to the right is paradise compared to what's beyond the 3-day travel. It's a 3-day travel, and you can be confronted with that. It's nothing you can even imagine. And to the right, after 3-day travel, you're going to come upon beauty and pleasure and opportunity. The left, it's not with even the same realm. It's not within the same class. Therefore, it's worthwhile to travel the hard road to ultimately come, because it's only a 3-day travel. So the Midrash says, what does David tell us? What's the lifespan of a human being? Shivim shana, im gvro shmonim shana, 80 years. But after 80 years, what happens? We talk about eternity. So as they say, it's a short road to hoe for what waits afterwards. 70 years, it's moments. If you invest a few moments, you merit eternity. What's 70 years versus unlimited? It's a blink of an eye. On the other side, for a few moments of pleasure, suffer for eternity. Therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu said, I'm presenting for you life and death. Ubacharta b'chayim. I'm encouraging you to choose life. But there's a cost factor. Everything has a cost factor. A person wants to succeed in the material. You need an education. You need a good education. And now that you're educated, now that you have the skills and you have the ability, now you have to apply yourself. You have to take initiative. And it's not simple. One doesn't always succeed. And even if you succeed, success is not immediate. It's years of investment. And you have your ups and you have your downs. You have your peaks and your valleys. Doesn't happen. Everything there's a sacrifice. Everything has a cost factor. The question is, where do you want to invest it? Do you want to invest it? Moshe says, B'charta b'chayim. I encourage you to choose life. That's the reality of existence. But how do you choose life? What's life? God says, eternity, one only has relevance to eternity. Eternity is spiritual. It's not a physical existence. As God is unlimited, is eternal, if you connect to Him and you attach yourself to His system, then you become eternal. But if you cannot connect with Him, then you're finite. Finite means it's here, it's gone. The Ramchal writes, Moshe Chaim Luzzatto writes, that as much as a human being, a Jew, is finite and we're limited, but the Torah tells us, when you cleave to Hashem Elokechem, you're all living. What does it mean you're living? As he explains, as much as we're all finite, but if you take a branch and you graft it onto a tree, and you graft it properly, and it takes fully, what happens? It becomes part of the ecosystem of the tree, and eventually it starts producing the fruit of the tree, the branch that's grafted onto the tree. A Jew has the ability to actually become part of God's system. How do you become an unlimited person? By grafting yourself onto the spiritual system. How do you attach yourself to the spiritual system? If you cleave, now how does a Jew cleave to God? God is fire. Can't cleave to fire. God says, I give you the description. This is the description of life. It's called Taryag Mitzvos. 613 mitzvos, 248 positive, 365 negative commandments. You live within that context, whatever applies to you, and you're dedicated to it, and you do it qualitatively, not with an ulterior motive to advance yourself, you become an eternal person, because now you've attached to an eternal system, to an unlimited system. Therefore, this is a B'charta b'chayim. Atem adveikim Hashem Elokechem chayim kulchem hayom. You become truly alive. Person is on life support. They said 3 days. They say, but he's alive. But maximum he's living 3 days. That's called being alive. He's holding out for another few moments, relatively speaking. It's not alive. But you realize you can live high on the hog for 70 years. And after 70 years, you go into the ash heap. Therefore what? That's living. You could have lived forever. For what did you give it up? So if you have an appreciation, understanding of what spirituality is, then this is the time to celebrate. This is the ultimate opportunity. I'll give you an example. At one time, GM, General Motors, was the ultimate. That was the ultimate corporation. Person finishes graduate school, gets a call, never had a job before. We're offering you chairmanship of GM, General Motors. Said, hey, explain to him, what does this entail? You realize you have to be in the office 7 days a week, on call, private jet, traveling around the world, meeting executives, Of course, you have your vacation on, but even when you're on vacation, you're on call, this and that. And you earn unlimited amount of money, so much share it in the company, so on and so forth. The person says, this is the ultimate. This is unheard of. This is a historical moment. Okay? Another person, this one person has the finest business degree. Went to the finest schools. He was mentored exactly for this job. Without experience, though, giving it, this is another person, simple age, elementary school dropout. Why is he a dropout? Because he preferred to be, walking on the street and going to the beach and whatever else way whittled away his life. He's offered this job. He's willing to teach you how to write and read and do arithmetic. So what are you talking about? You think I'm going to give up my freedom for that? So what are we talking about? The man missed the boat. So what are you going? How do you live out your life? As nothing, wasteful, waste a life away. It's exactly the same thing. But did you realize how much money I can make? Do you know how much pleasure I could have? You know what I'm able to accomplish? What are you going to accomplish? What? So you went here and you traveled there and you possessed this, and therefore what? What have you accomplished? It's interesting. Mishnah tells us in Pirkei Avos, Schar b'ha'el maleko, that reward in this world doesn't exist. Why doesn't reward exist in this world? If you have something which has infinite value, could you be rewarded? A person sells something. It's worth, there's no amount of money beyond $1 trillion. Eventually there'll be soon. Okay? But at this point, there's only trillion is the largest number. Okay? And a person offers a person an item that's worth beyond that. The person says there's not enough money in existence to pay for that. You can't buy it. It's beyond one's capacity. The value of the most so-called ordinary mitzvah, whatever its innate value is, there's not enough reward in this physical existence to pay that person, to reward that person. There's not enough. So what do? God says, reward is not in this world, it's the world to come. But let's say, the Torah tells us, Mishalim the son of Aponof Lavido, God pays off his enemies to send them into the oblivion. That after he lives this life, goes into the oblivion. Spiritual oblivion. Spiritual abyss. But nobody is all bad. He threw the bone to the dog. He took his dog to the best vet, best neurologist. Even got dog insurance for it. Right? Life insurance. When he dies, the dog is his heir. Treated his dog like better than his own child. He deserves reward. So how do you take something which has infinite value, and God says, but you have an interest in the world to come? That means I have to take something with the infinite, condense it into 70 years. You have a Rolls Royce for every day of the week. You have a summer home, a winter home, a spring home. You have a sub basement, which that's where the real swimming pool is. On the other level, there's something else. You understand? So what are you envious of? The man has 7 Rolls Royces. He collects cars and diamonds and everything else. But you know what the cost factor is? That's the payout. That's his eternity. In 3 days, he's being paid off for something which has unlimited worth, which is ultimately precious. That's reality. But how do you relate to that? How do you process it? It's like the Wharton Harvard graduate school business degree, understanding what General Motors is, and the elementary school dropout. Elementary school dropout can't appreciate what it means chairman of the board of General Motors. But the one who has the background, who's mentored to appreciate what the value of that is, he understands what that is. He celebrates forever when he's offered that opportunity. That's the difference. A Jew who has a background, has an orientation for understanding what spirituality is. This is the ultimate. This is simcha, this is joy. But unfortunately, the ordinary Jew, who doesn't have that orientation, doesn't have the capacity, he's being crushed. Here I had 9 mitzvahs, 7 Noahide laws, circumcision and Gid HaNoshe, the sciaticum. All of a sudden now you're saddling me with this overwhelming, crushing responsibility. This is not celebration. This is worse than Tisha B'Av. We got to grieve over this. You've taken away my life. It's like the school dropout. You've taken away everything I have, my freedom. I can't waste my life any longer. That's the moral. Therefore, the Torah, it's Chag HaBikurim. It's the festival of the new fruits. Everybody could toot his horn then, and sing and rejoice, and drink his l'chaim. For that, you could drink a l'chaim. Yom Trua, have a sweet year, sweet new year. Honey, dip the apple, the honey, the challah, or the holly in the honey. You're okay. That's a time to rejoice, but that's not what it's about. It's a whole different understanding. That's why the Torah conceals these two Yom Tovim, for that reason. It's interesting, we find the beginning creation, there are many appellations for God. And God has unpronounceable names. Elokim, that appellation represents the attribute of justice. Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the 4-letter name of God, is the attribute of mercy, Rachmim, Midas HaRachmim. We read about the narrative of creation. Bereshis Bor Elokim, Eisa Shemayim V'Soretz. In the beginning, Elokim created. And it's continuous. Vayomer Elokim, and Elokim said. The first day, the second day, every day it's Elokim. It should say Vayomer Hashem. Why is it Elokim? So Rashi cites the Chazal, the Medrash, that initially, when God created existence, there was a Midas Hadin, was the attribute of justice. But when he came to man, and because he saw man is prone to fail, he coalesced into the attribute of justice, attribute of Rachman, mercy. So it's Hashem Elokim. Otherwise, the world cannot continue. Cannot continue based on the attribute of justice. That's what God did. So the question is, God says, Elokim said there should be, in the beginning, Elokim created heaven and earth. This pre-human being. What does the attribute of justice have to do with creation of heaven and earth? Elokim said there should be light. Elokim said, let the waters gather. This pre-human being. What does the attribute of justice have to do, Midas Hadin, have to do with creation of the inanimate or of unintelligible creatures? The fish, what does that do with anything? With the birds? But it's Elokim, Elokim. What is Elokim? What is the attribute of justice? Attribute of justice is precision, exactness. Exactness, that's what Elokim means. God is exacting. If God created everything in an exacting context, ultimately when man comes on the scene, the whole context of existence is exacting. So that means your behavior has to be exact, as he expects. So if it's not exact, then actually you're undermining existence. Therefore, there's going to be a reaction. There's going to be punishment. Therefore, God had to coalesce. So the exacting of creation is unrelated to punishment. It's the context. Things have to be exact. So your behavior has to be exact. If not, there's a consequence. So now why does creation have to be exact? Why does the creation have to be exact? That means there's nothing superfluous in creation. The reason why everything is created exactly the way it was, in terms of its molecular structure, atoms, everything that's included with existence, the galaxies, it was created with exactness for a reason. Why was it created for an exactness with a reason? The answer is because Torah is exact. If this is the setting to accommodate Torah, in Torah there's nothing superfluous. Torah is perfect. Torah is Hashem Tamima. It's perfect. You're not permitted to add to the Torah, you're not permitted to detract from the Torah. What is Torah? Shlomo Melech tells us in Mishlei, Emes Kenei Val Timkor. Acquire truth, don't sell truth. Truth It's either truth, you detract an iota from truth, it's no longer truth. I always mention the Maral. The letter that represents the smallest entity is Aleph. If you take Aleph away from Emes, what is left? Emtes, death. It's no truth any longer. But it's truthful 99.99 forever. Unless it's 100%, it's not truth. So what does that mean? It means it's exacting. Torah is exactly what it has to be. The Gemara tells us that Torah is Midas Hadin. When God studies Torah, that's the time of the attribute of justice. Why? You ask a person, is it permitted or not permitted? There's no gray. It's black and white. It's either yes or no. It's exact. Torah is exact. That's the attribute of justice. Therefore, although we're bound by Torah, but because we're humans, and we have human frailties, especially due to the chet of Adam Rishon, because he ate of the tree of knowledge, and he ingested within himself evil, therefore God had to coalesce into the Midas Hadin, Midas Harachmim. Without Midas Harachmim, because of the context of existence being exacting, there's nothing superfluous, there has to be Midas Harachmim. Otherwise we couldn't survive. But it's Bereshis Bara Elokim. It's Bishvul Rashis. Everything that exists is only to facilitate Torah. Only for that reason, nothing else. So let's talk now. The nations of the world, their armaments, their victories, their contributions to humanity, whatever level, as architects, what is the value? If it's somehow not connected to Torah, it wouldn't exist. There's a connection to Torah. There's the famous word from the Brisker Rav. The Gemara tells us, at the end of time, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yoshev v'Sefer Torah b'cheiko. God will sit with a Sefer Torah in his lap, Kavayoho, and he will announce to the world, anybody who has a share in Torah should come take his rightful reward. Who's the first one to show up, to present himself? The Romans. Our investment in Torah is phenomenal. Whatever we did, only for the sake that the Jews should study Torah. This is the Romans. They destroyed the second Beis HaMikdash. We're still experiencing Golos Edom. This is the Edomite exile. It's the longest exile. So he says to them, what did you contribute? What is your investment in Torah? And whatever we did is Kadesh Yilmudu Yisrael Torah. That they should study Torah. What did you do? He says, we waged wars. We accumulated tremendous amounts of wealth. We built boulevards. We built bathhouses. We built markets. We did all this so the Jews should study Torah. That's what we did it all. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, God says, this is a moment of truth. This is not like today. This is the moment of, they know they're speaking to God. God says, that's not why you built it. You built it for whatever reason, which the Gemara describes. And he dismisses them. The Persians come in. What did Jews contribute? What's your investment in Torah? We built water aqueducts. We built bridges. We did this only so the Jews should study Torah. Hashem says that's not the reason. He did it for whatever reason. Dismisses them. Every nation. What's even the consideration? Did they really do it to that? Because it's a moment of truth, they come to realization. Of course they had their own interests. But they understand factually, unless somehow it had relevance to this fulfillment of Torah, they couldn't have brought that about. They could have succeeded regardless of what their intent was. Couldn't have happened. So factually, it's Kadesh Yilmudu Yisrael Torah. So the Jews should study Torah. That's why we were able to be effective. So regardless of our intention, we provided, we invested, we facilitated Torah. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, but that's not enough of a reason to deserve a share in the Torah. It's your intent. That was not your intent. But what does this all go back to? This goes back to Bereshis Bara Elokim. It's exacting. Nothing could happen, no discovery could be, only for one reason. Kadesh Yilmudu Yisrael Torah. That's the purpose. There's nothing superfluous in existence. So if they come up with some kind of innovation or discovery, whatever it may, let it be the medical field, the technical field, scientific, whatever it is, the reason why they came upon that, Kedei Shilmud Yisrael Torah. Only for that. No other reason. Because this goes back to Elokim. Bereshis bara Elokim Yisrael Shemayim Yisraelis. All existence is only for that and no other reason. And the only nation who has relevance to that is Kedei Shilmdu Yisrael Torah. That the Jewish people study Torah. It has nothing to do with the world. No, the Koreans are studying the Talmud and all this other stuff. It's all nonsense. It's foolishness. A non-Jew is not even permitted to study Torah. It's not. Torah Tzivilon Moshe Morosha Kilas Yaakov. The Torah is the betrothed of Kilas Yaakov, the congregation of Yaakov. The non-Jew is not, God forbid, a person that commits adultery. It's adultery. They're not permitted. The Torah is the betrothed of Klal Yisrael. It's not something which the world has any right to. They want to study the 7 Noahide laws. What pertains to them, that they're permitted. But outside of the Shem Mitzvah Noach, they're not permitted. So again, we did all this Kedei Sheyilmadu Yisrael Torah, only for the Jews. We'll stop here.